Have you ever felt a profound and unsettling silence descend upon your life? A silence so deep it feels like the whole world has turned its back on you. If this feeling resonates deep within your soul, know that you have arrived at a sacred threshold. What you are experiencing is not abandonment, but a divine realignment, a shedding of old skins you were never meant to wear. This journey is one of the loneliest and most terrifying a soul can undertake, but it is the path to your true sovereign power. Many will turn back, but you are still here, still listening. That means you are ready. Stay with me, for what I am about to share will illuminate the darkness and confirm that you are not losing your mind. You are finally, truly, finding your soul. If these words touch that silent, knowing place within you, let the universe know by typing "I am not alone" in the comments. Your story is a beacon for others walking this path. Subscribe and let us walk it together. There comes a moment, a pivot point in the soul's journey, when the silence becomes utterly unbearable. But what is this silence? Is it merely the absence of conversation, the lack of ringing phones or buzzing notifications? It is something far deeper, an existential quiet that echoes in the vast, empty chambers of your heart. It is the chilling realization that even in a world overflowing with noise, a cacophony of opinions, distractions, and meaningless chatter, no one is truly seeing you. No one is attuned to your frequency. You feel like a ghost at a feast, a phantom presence moving through rooms filled with people, yet your essence remains completely invisible. This is the silence that Nietzsche understood not as a void, but as a message. It's a divine alarm bell, a signal from your higher self that the roles you have been playing, the masks you have been wearing for the sake of acceptance, have finally suffocated your true essence. Everyone knows the ache of feeling invisible, but few understand its sacred purpose. It is the universe's way of creating a vacuum, a holy emptiness that can only be filled by one thing: your authentic self. So stay. Do not run from this deafening quiet. For Nietzsche believed, and your soul knows, that when you feel like you are losing everyone and everything, you are, in fact, on the verge of finding the only thing that truly matters: yourself. This is the first step in a profound and divine transformation, a journey that begins not with a bang, but with the quiet, unnerving whisper of your own forgotten truth. At first, you don't even notice the shift. It's not a cataclysmic event. It's a subtle, almost imperceptible change in the spiritual atmosphere around you. The transformation isn't loud. It doesn't announce its arrival. It is slow, creeping into the corners of your life like fog rolling into a familiar room, gradually obscuring the landmarks you once used to navigate your reality. You find yourself speaking less. Not because you have nothing left to say, on the contrary. Your inner world has never been richer, more vibrant, more complex. You fall silent because you begin to perceive a painful truth. Most people are not listening to understand. They are merely waiting for their turn to respond. They are not seeking connection. They are seeking validation for their own narratives. To explain the depths of your experience to them feels like trying to describe the color of the sky to someone born blind. It's a futile expenditure of sacred energy, so you stop filling the silence. You stop trying to build bridges to islands of indifference. And in doing so, as you quiet the external noise, you start to hear something else, something ancient and powerful. A voice, a vibration, a resonance from a place deeper than thought, just beneath the surface of your conscious mind. This is the voice of your soul, your higher self, finally given the space to speak. This emerging inner clarity changes everything. You stop laughing at the jokes that feel like tiny paper cuts to your spirit, those thinly veiled weapons of passive aggression wrapped in the guise of politeness. You recognize them for what they are: low vibrational attempts to keep you small and compliant. You find yourself unable to tolerate the dissonance of feigning agreement for the sake of social harmony. The simple act of nodding along to a belief that violates your inner truth becomes physically uncomfortable, a betrayal you can no longer commit. You stop explaining your boundaries to people who have demonstrated, time and time again, that they have no intention of honoring them. You realize that your boundaries are not a negotiation, They are a sacred declaration of self-worth. You simply begin to embody them, and those who cannot respect your temple will find they are no longer granted entry. You cease softening your truth, diluting its potency to make it more palatable for those who mistake your newfound clarity for cruelty, your honesty for arrogance. You understand that your truth is a fire, and you are no longer willing to dim its flames for those who are afraid of the light. This refusal to compromise your core essence initiates the next phase, the great vanishing. And so, this begins the vanishing, not of you, but of the entire architecture of the false identity you wore like heavy, ill-fitting armor. People begin to fade from your life. It is not a sudden exodus, not a dramatic, simultaneous departure. It is a gradual, subtle, and often confusing process, like a slow shift in seasons. The invitations become fewer. The texts grow shorter and less frequent. The missed calls are no longer followed by urgent messages, and you feel no compulsion to return them. A space begins to open up where once there was a crowd. At first, this feels like a profound loss, and you don't blame them. You instinctively turn the blame inward, upon yourself. The old programming kicks in, the chorus of self-doubt that has kept you trapped for so long. A voice whispers, "Maybe I am the problem. Maybe I've become too cold, too distant, too difficult. Maybe I expect too much from people." You question your sanity, your worth, your very character. This is the ego's last stand, its desperate attempt to pull you back into the familiar prison of conformity. You are grieving, but what you are grieving is not the loss of true friendship. You are grieving the dissolution of the roles you were forced to play. The helper, always ready to fix everyone else's problems while ignoring your own. The peacemaker, sacrificing your truth on the altar of others' comfort. The placeholder, filling a space in someone's life until something better came along. You are no longer the one who contorts yourself into unnatural shapes just to fit into the empty spaces of someone else's life. You have stopped performing. And when you stop playing those roles, something strange and miraculous happens. The people who were only attached to the mask, to the performance, begin to vanish. They don't leave with anger or fanfare, but with a quiet, almost indifferent withdrawal. It's because the person they had a relationship with, the compliant, people-pleasing version of you, no longer exists. Your new frequency of authenticity is jarring to their system. It holds up a mirror to their own inauthenticity, and for many, that reflection is too uncomfortable to bear. Your silence, which they once filled with their own noise, now makes them uneasy. Your truth, which you now speak without apology, disrupts the comfortable illusions they live by. They pull back, not because you have become worse, but precisely because you have become clearer, more real. And clarity is profoundly disruptive to a world built on fog. It pierces through the collective haze that most people depend on to survive. It ruins the comfortable stories they tell themselves about who they are and who you are supposed to be. It interrupts the intricate, unconscious games they have played for years. Games you used to participate in without question, laughing when it wasn't funny, agreeing just to avoid tension, smiling through deep discomfort. You were afraid of losing people, but the truth is, you had already lost them the moment you chose your truth over your image. They left, and what's left now is you. Just you. But deep down, in the core of your being, something else begins to stir. It is a voice not heard in years, perhaps not since you were a child, before the world taught you to hide, before you taught yourself to dim your own light. It is a voice that doesn't ask for permission, a voice that doesn't beg to be liked, a voice that simply knows, and it whispers, "You're remembering." You are remembering who you were before you were convinced that being accepted was more important than being real. And with that sacred memory comes a wave of grief, but it's a different kind of grief. It is a cleansing fire. You grieve the parts of yourself you silenced, for so long the inner fire you smothered, the wild instincts you second-guessed, the passions you dismissed because someone else called them too much. But as you grieve, you also begin to grow. You notice how much of your life was meticulously constructed around keeping others comfortable at the expense of your own soul. You realize how often your silence was mistaken for agreement, how every time your honesty was called an attitude. It was simply a reflection of their inability to face the truth. You begin to wonder, how much of my identity was just a mask I wore to survive? As this awareness dawns, you begin to feel the profound difference between loneliness and liberation. At first, they can feel the same. Both are quiet, both can feel cold, but one is heavy and one is spacious. Loneliness is the heavy weight of a cage, the feeling that you are alone because you are fundamentally unworthy or flawed. It is an ache that echoes with the voices of those who left. Liberation, however, is the spaciousness of an open sky. It is the realization that you are alone because you have finally stopped performing. You have stopped contorting yourself for an audience that was never truly watching. Loneliness is a void. Liberation is a fullness of self. Nietzsche knew this. He believed that the beginning of true transformation is the loss of the crowd. He taught that when a person begins to think independently, when they stop parroting the opinions handed down to them by culture, family, and society, they will inevitably be cast out. Not in chains, not with violence, but with something far more insidious, indifference. Because nothing terrifies the collective more than an individual who no longer seeks its validation. If this message is stirring something inside you, do not just watch. Subscribe. This channel exists for the parts of you that no one else speaks to. So if you have found yourself eating alone, walking alone, thinking alone, if you have noticed the absence more than the presence, if your conversations have gone from empty chatter to meaningful monologues with yourself, then understand this. You are not dissolving, you are differentiating. And differentiation is the very root of a sovereign identity. This isn't a breakdown, it's a breakthrough. But here is the ultimate test. Can you sit in this in-between space without turning back? Can you resist the primal urge to reach out to the people who only loved the version of you that served them? Can you remain utterly still while your former life decays around you and trust, with every fiber of your being, that something new, something real, will rise in its place? Because if you can, something incredibly rare begins to grow within you. Not louder thoughts, not more confidence, but a deeper, unshakable knowing. You begin to notice the superficiality in the world with a new, compassionate detachment. You see how many friendships are built on the flimsy foundation of proximity, not true intimacy. You recognize that most relationships are simply unspoken contracts of mutual convenience. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The invitation then becomes clear, to stop seeking comfort in conformity and to start finding divine strength in your solitude. This is the sacred threshold Nietzsche spoke of, the beginning of the free spirit, the precursor to the overperson. It is the raw, uncertain, and holy stage between the death of the mask and the birth of the self. Most people never cross it. They run back to the crowd, not because it nourishes them, but because they fear being unseen. But you are still here. And that means something profound. It means you are willing to stay in the alchemical fire of this transformation long enough to see what survives the burning. Nietzsche believed this was the gateway to becoming the Übermenschnot, someone superior, but someone sovereign. A person who no longer borrows meaning from society because they have learned to generate it from within. A person who no longer follows the map because they have become the compass. And a person like that doesn't need a crowd to feel whole. They don't crave popularity, they crave alignment. They don't ask, do they like me? They ask, do I feel alive here? And if the answer echoing from the depths of your soul is a quiet, resolute no, then you leave. This departure is not an act of adolescent rebellion, not a tantrum thrown against the world in a fit of pique. It is a sacred act of devotion, a profound and holy reverence for your own soul. It is the moment you finally choose the integrity of your inner world over the comfort of a borrowed reality. Think of a majestic, ancient tree whose roots have finally encountered solid bedrock. It cannot continue to grow downwards into the unyielding stone. Instead, it must shift its entire pattern of growth, reaching wider and higher, even if it means breaking the pavement of the world above it. Your soul, in this moment, has hit its own bedrock of truth. It can no longer contort itself to fit into the cramped, stony soil of relationships and environments that do not nourish it. To stay would be to wither. To leave is to choose life. It is an act of supreme spiritual courage, a declaration that your own inner alignment is more valuable than any external validation. This is because, once you have tasted, truly tasted, the ambrosia of honoring yourself, you can never fully return to a diet of self-betrayal. What is this taste? It is the clean, crisp sensation of a decision made from your core, a feeling of rightness that permeates every cell of your being. It's the quiet hum of a perfectly tuned instrument, the resonance of your own divine frequency ringing clear and true. Before this, you may have subsisted on the bitter crumbs of conditional acceptance, the stale bread of approval that was only offered when you performed your designated role. You begged for this sustenance, contorting your spirit, silencing your needs, and convincing yourself that this was all you deserved. But the moment you honor your own truth by saying no, by walking away, by choosing silence over dissonance, you experience a nourishment so profound that it redefines your understanding of sustenance. It's like a person who has only ever known murky, stagnant water, suddenly drinking from a pure, cold mountain spring. The contrast is absolute. The memory of that purity is indelible. Once you know that this inner clarity exists, the thought of returning to the polluted waters of people-pleasing becomes unbearable. The soul has a memory, and it will no longer allow you to forget the taste of its own essence. You begin to realize, with a startling and sometimes painful clarity, that some doors are not meant to be reopened. For years, you may have stood before them, knocking, pleading, hoping for a different response, a moment of understanding, an apology that would finally grant you closure. But the spiritual awakening you are undergoing reveals a profound truth. Closure is not a key that someone else holds. It is not a conversation you need to have or a final word you need to hear. Closure is an internal click, the moment you withdraw your own energy from a door that has long been locked to you. It is the quiet, sovereign act of turning around and walking away, not in anger, but in acceptance. It's the realization that you can lay your own ghosts to rest. You understand that true healing is not a performance. It's not a grand, dramatic spectacle you stage for the world to witness and applaud. There are no certificates of completion, no standing ovations. Healing is a quiet, internal revolution, a messy, non-linear, and deeply personal process that you undergo in the dark, in the sacred crucible of your own solitude. It is the patient work of tending to your own inner garden, pulling the weeds of old beliefs, watering the seeds of new truths, and trusting the slow, organic process of growth, even when there are no visible blossoms. And through this sacred, solitary work, you become lighter. This lightness is not a whimsical, floaty feeling, but a deep, grounded sense of relief. It's not because the weight of your life magically disappears, but because you finally stop carrying the burdens that were never yours to begin with. Imagine you have been on a long, arduous pilgrimage, carrying a heavy backpack filled with stones. You believed you had to carry them, that they were your responsibility. Each stone represents an unspoken expectation from your family, a societal standard you felt compelled to meet, the emotional baggage of a friend you tried to save, the inherited trauma of your ancestors, the crushing weight of a role you played to keep the peace. For years, you have carried this load, your shoulders aching, your spirit stooped. The process of becoming is the moment you finally stop, open the backpack, and examine each stone. With dawning awareness, you realize, this is not mine. This stone of my mother's unfulfilled dreams is not mine to carry. This stone of my father's stoic silence is not mine. This stone of a friend's perpetual victimhood is not mine. This stone of society's definition of success is not mine. And one by one, with reverence and forgiveness, you lay them down. You stop arguing for your value with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop explaining your needs to those who are incapable of hearing them. You stop auditioning for a place in lives where you were never meant to be a star. The energy you once expended on proving your worth is now reclaimed, returned to its rightful owner, you. Instead of seeking yourself in the reflections of others, you return to yourself. This is the great homecoming. You return not as the person they remember, the fragmented, accommodating, and predictable character they had cast in their life's drama. That person was a beautiful, necessary costume, but a costume nonetheless. You return as the person you were always, underneath it all, in the process of becoming. You are the sculptor who has finally taken the chisel to their own life, chipping away the marble of conditioning, expectation, and fear to reveal the masterpiece that was always waiting within. You are the person who no longer waits to be chosen, because in the holy fire of your solitude, you have finally, irrevocably, chosen yourself. This act of self-choosing is a profound energetic shift. It broadcasts a new frequency into the universe, a signal of sovereignty and self-respect. And if this new frequency, this authentic, unapologetic truth of your being, makes you too much for some, then you must bless them and let them go. Let this be your mantra. I release you with love. Understand that being too much is not a flaw. It is a divine filtering mechanism. Your light is too much for those who have grown comfortable in the shadows. Your depth is too much for those who prefer to wade in the shallows. Your passion is too much for those who are afraid to feel. Your silence is too much for those who cannot bear to be with their own thoughts. Your truth is too much for those who are sustained by illusion. Let them go. Do not shrink yourself to fit into their world. Allow them to depart so that you can fully inhabit your own. Because your too much will be someone else's just right. There are souls in this universe vibrating at your frequency, souls who have been waiting for someone exactly like you. For them, your depth will not be intimidating. It will feel like coming home. Your truth will not be an invitation to argue. It will be an invitation to rise with you. Your passion will not be overwhelming. It will be the spark that ignites their own. But first, this liminal space, this waiting, this wondering, this holy disconnection. Do not mistake this sacred pause for punishment. It is the most profound preparation. It is the universe's chrysalis, the space between the caterpillar you were and the butterfly you are becoming. Inside this quiet, everything dissolves. The old structures, the old relationships, the old ways of being, they all turn to a kind of spiritual goo. It is a period of immense uncertainty and, at times, terror. You may feel lost, unmoored, floating in a vast, starless sea. This is the moment most people panic. They cannot tolerate the ambiguity. They scramble back to the familiar shore, back to the relationships and roles that, while suffocating, were at least predictable. But you are still here. You are learning to breathe in this space. You are discovering that when your silence is no longer scary, when the ache of solitude transforms into the peace of solitude, when your own presence becomes a sanctuary, that is when the real ones arrive. They arrive not as a rescue party, but as fellow travelers drawn to the light of your sovereign flame. They are not many, but they are enough. They come not because you need them to complete you, but because your wholeness resonates with their own. These are the connections forged in truth, not in transaction. They arrive because you have become someone who no longer needs to pretend. You can walk into a room and feel no compulsion to prove, to perform, to justify your existence. You have mastered the sacred art of knowing when to speak and when to stay silent, because your inner world is no longer a chaotic battleground, but a peaceful, well-tended kingdom. You become someone who can hold space for another person's truth, in all its complexity and shadow, without flinching, because you have finally learned to hold your own. With this realization, the entire narrative of your loss collapses. You see with divine clarity, you are not losing friends, you are losing illusions. The connections that dissolved were not friendships. They were soul contracts that had reached their expiration date. They were assignments, catalysts for the very growth that led you to this moment. You are not becoming cold, you are becoming clear. The warmth you now generate is not the frantic, people-pleasing heat of a bonfire, but the steady, enduring glow of a star. You are not behind, you are becoming. You have stepped off the common, well-trodden path of societal timelines and onto the unique, sacred timeline of your own soul's evolution. And yes, Becoming is a lonely process. It must be. A snake sheds its skin alone. A butterfly emerges from its chrysalis alone. A star is born in the vast solitude of space. This is not because you are meant to be alone forever, but because the magnitude of this transformation requires your undivided focus. Not everyone is meant to come with you on this next leg of the journey. Their path diverges here, and you must honor that divergence with grace. This is your rite of passage, your sacred unraveling, your cosmic reset. The feeling of emptiness is not a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that you are being cleared. You are being cleared of old energies, old patterns, old attachments that no longer serve your highest alignment. You are not being rejected. You are being rerouted onto a path with a higher destiny. You are not unlovable. You are learning the highest form of love that can exist without losing yourself in the process. So rest now. Allow yourself this sacred period of stillness. Let the silence hold you like a divine embrace. Let the loneliness teach you the profound beauty of your own company. Let the grief pass through you, not as a destructive flood, but as a cleansing river, washing away the last remnants of the person you pretended to be. Because on the other side of this deep, resonant quiet is the version of you that you have always been meant to meet. That self has been waiting patiently for you. They have walked through every storm with you, a silent presence in the background. They have waited beneath every mask, a glimmer of truth in your eyes. They have whispered in every moment you tried to abandon yourself, a gentle ache in your heart. And now you have finally heard them. You have stopped running. You have returned. You are not alone anymore, because you have finally come home to yourself.